I'm 32 female now, and about 6 years ago, I started my own business. It was tough at first, late nights, endless stress, and sometimes barely making rent. But I loved what I was building. Eventually, things started to pick up, and over time, I managed to turn that small startup into something successful. I'm really proud of how far it's come, especially since I did it all on my own without any help or handouts. Now, my mom is 58, and about 10 years ago, she remarried my stepdad, John. I didn't have anything against John at first. He seemed like a decent guy. He came into the picture after my dad passed away, and although it took some time to adjust, I was happy to see my mom move on. John brought his son, Chris, into the family too. Chris was 18 at the time, and to be honest, we've never been particularly close. He's kind of the opposite of me. He's never been much of a go-getter, always floating from one thing to the next without much ambition. He's had a string of jobs over the years, but nothing that's really stuck. When she married John and Chris came into the picture, it was like she finally got the son she'd always wanted, even though Chris wasn't her biological child. She started doting on him immediately. She would defend him no matter what, constantly making excuses for his behavior and lack of direction. If Chris couldn't hold down a job, it was because he just hadn't found the right fit yet. If Chris got into financial trouble, she'd swoop in and bail him out, even though she didn't have the means to do so. In many ways, she started treating Chris like he was the golden child, while I, her actual daughter, was the one who had to fend for herself. I didn't resent her for it at first. After all, Chris was her stepson, and she was probably trying to make him feel welcome. But as the years went by, it became obvious that she placed him on a pedestal that he hadn't earned. I also suspect that part of her behavior stems from her ongoing competition with Chris's biological mother. John doesn't talk much about his ex-wife, but I've heard bits and pieces over the years. Chris's mom is a successful, independent woman, and I think my mom feels like she's in some kind of rivalry with her. She wants to prove that she's the better, more supportive mom for Chris, even though she came into his life later. It's almost like she's overcompensating, trying to win some imaginary race against Chris's real mother. So as my business started to grow, my mom became more and more interested in how well I was doing. At first, it was just typical parental curiosity. She was proud of me, I think, and she'd ask how the business was going. But over time, her questions started to change. She began dropping hints about how Chris could really use a stable job, and how it would be such a great opportunity for him if I could bring him into the business. At first, I shrugged it off. It was clear to me that Chris wasn't cut out for what I was doing, and to be honest, I didn't want to mix family with business. My company is my livelihood, and I've always been really protective of it. Plus, I'd worked hard to hire a team that was qualified and dedicated, and Chris, bless him, has never been the most driven person. I wasn't going to risk my business for family drama. But my mom didn't let it go. Every time we talked, she'd bring it up. She started to guilt trip me, saying things like, "Chris is family," and "You need to help him." She'd even make offhand comments like, "Chris is like a brother to you," as if we'd grown up together or something. But we hadn't. We didn't have that kind of bond, and I wasn't going to pretend we did. The real breaking point came a few months ago when my mom sat me down for what she called a serious conversation. She told me that Chris had been struggling to find stable work again, and that as his family, it was my responsibility to help him. But this time, she wasn't just asking me to give him a job. No, she wanted me to make Chris a partner in my business, a full-fledged partner. I was stunned. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Chris, a partner? In a business that he had zero experience in and no stake in? I tried to explain to her that running a business doesn't work that way, that you can't just hand over a chunk of your company to someone who hasn't earned it. But she wasn't listening. She got angry, accusing me of being selfish and not caring about family, not accepting Chris as a brother. She said that if I didn't do this for Chris, she would rethink our relationship because she is ashamed of me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother was threatening to cut me out of her life over this? Over Chris, who hadn't even asked for any of this himself. After that conversation, I took a step back and tried to give myself some space. But my mom didn't let up. She kept calling and texting, demanding that I reconsider. John even got involved, sending me a long email about how I was tearing the family apart by refusing to help Chris. It felt like they were all ganging up on me, and I was being made out to be the villain for simply protecting what I had worked for. Then, a few days ago, my mom showed up at my office unannounced, with Chris in tow. She was there to discuss the partnership as if it were a done deal. I lost it. I told her flat out that it wasn't happening, and she had crossed a line. She exploded, saying I would regret this and that I was abandoning my family. She said she disowns me until I change my mind. I told her that in this case, she and her family had 30 days to move out. She had completely forgotten, or maybe just chose to ignore, the fact that the house she was living in, the one she shared with John and Chris, belonged to me. And if she wanted to make threats, well, I had leverage too. You see, about 7 years ago, my mom was on the verge of losing her house, the house I grew up in, because of some financial struggle she was dealing with. She was in serious debt, and there was no way she could keep up with the payments. I couldn't bear the thought of her losing that home, especially since it had sentimental value to both of us. So I stepped in. I bought the house outright, fully intending to let her live there as long as they needed, rent-free. It was my way of giving her some stability and peace of mind after everything she'd gone through. It wasn't a big deal for me at the time. She's my mom, and I wanted to help. My mom and John have been living in a house for years, and I've never asked for anything in return. I've let them live there freely because, in my mind, it was the least I could do for my mom. So now she looked at me like I had just slapped her. She never thought I'd actually kick her out. She scoffed, saying I was bluffing, but I wasn't. I was dead serious. I'd had enough of her manipulation and entitlement. If she wanted to play these games, she could do it somewhere else. Now things have completely blown up. My mom has been calling me nonstop, begging me to reconsider. John's furious. Chris, ironically, hasn't said much. He's been kind of caught in the middle of all this, and I actually feel a little sorry for him. But my mom won't let it go. She's even gotten other family members involved, and now I'm getting calls from cousins and aunts who are all split down the middle. Some say I'm being heartless for kicking my own mother out. Others say I did the right thing, and that she crossed a serious line by trying to manipulate me into giving Chris part of my business. Honestly, I feel conflicted. On the one hand, I don't feel guilty about standing my ground when it comes to my business. It's mine, and I built it from scratch. No one has the right to force me to hand over a part of it. But on the other hand, kicking my mom out feels extreme. I never wanted things to get this bad, and I'm struggling with whether I've overreacted. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for kicking my mom and her family out of the house after she tried to force me to make her stepson a partner in my business? It sounds like OP's mom tried to use emotional manipulation to get OP to do something completely unreasonable. Making Chris a partner in OP's business? That's just absurd, especially since he hasn't earned it. It's OP's business, and OP has every right to protect what she worked so hard for. OP's mom crossed the line when she threatened to disown OP. OP is not obligated to sacrifice her business just because she's trying to keep the peace with her stepson. Kicking them out was a tough decision, but she put OP in an impossible situation. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Your mom is trying to hold your relationship hostage in order to force you into giving Chris something he hasn't earned. Family doesn't mean handing over your hard-earned success to someone just because they're related to you. And in this case, he's not even really your family. The fact that you bought her house and let her live there rent-free shows how much you've already done for her. If she can't appreciate that and starts making unreasonable demands, then she's the one who needs to reassess her priorities, not you. I'm gonna go with everyone sucks here. Your mom is definitely in the wrong for trying to force you into giving Chris a partnership in your business. That's not how businesses work. She's being manipulative and entitled. But kicking her out of the house might have been a little too harsh, especially given that she's your mom and she's lived there for so long. Maybe there was a way to resolve this without going nuclear. I get that you were pushed to your limit, but was there any middle ground you could have found? It just seems like this escalated quickly into a no-win situation. I'm 26 female, engaged to Mike, 30 male. We each have funds for the wedding and honeymoon, splitting 50-50. I mentioned a few times I would love to go somewhere in Europe for our honeymoon. Mike agreed initially, but then said that we couldn't afford to go to Europe and to pick somewhere closer. I thought we both had a decent amount of money set aside, but Mike said with the wedding and honeymoon costs, it'd be too high, and he needed to lower the budget, and I should lower my end too, unless I want to cover the rest. I have a good job and can afford to splurge a little, so I said it's fine. We'll go to Europe and I'll cover most of it. We haven't booked anything yet, by the way. A few days ago, we went on a double date with Mike's brother, Gary, 32 male, and his girlfriend, Steph, 24 female. Steph said she and Gary were going on a trip to France, first-class plane, the works. Now, as far as I know, Gary has an average salary and Steph doesn't work. I thought maybe they had extra savings or something. None of my business, but then Steph said it was so nice of Mike to sponsor their trip. I was shocked. I asked Mike, and he replied that yes, he paid for their plane tickets and hotel, and that they deserved a nice holiday. I said that money was meant to go towards our honeymoon, to which Mike said that I'd agreed to cover it, and if not, we can go somewhere cheaper. Gary then chimed in and said he's Mike's brother, and he was just helping out him and Steph. I told Mike that he disrespected us by giving that money for Gary's trip. Mike then said it's none of my business how he spends his money, and both Gary and Steph started saying I was being controlling. I got really upset and felt like crying, so I left. Mike came home later and said that I'd embarrassed him by creating a scene in front of Gary and Steph, and I was greedy. I said I needed to clear my head, so I'm now staying over at my cousin's place. I was being greedy and controlling? Not the a-hole. If you're in the US, going to France in first class, we're talking thousands of dollars for each ticket. That's a ton of money to spend while also telling you that there's not enough money for your own honeymoon. This is really strange to me. I know we often say break up for every little thing, but in this case, I would personally be reconsidering the marriage. If helping his brother with a luxury vacation is more important than your honeymoon, there's a big problem somewhere. Communal narcissists will often spend money to look good in front of others, but get very stingy financially and emotionally with their own families. OP should really take a close look at how he behaves outside of this. Not the a-hole. Honey, please don't marry this guy. I had bad red flags before my first wedding and went through with it feeling so much outside pressure, and damn, I should have just dipped. Would have saved me a lot of heartache and money and time in court. Rethink your decisions. First-class tickets cost a lot. What the heck? Who pays for someone else to fly first class? I mean, I don't get why he's paying for any of it. The whole thing is super weird. I would honestly think my other half was being blackmailed if he did this. But I can't get the first-class tickets out of my head. It's such an unnecessary extravagance. Why does Steph, who does not work for some reason, deserve a nice holiday? And especially more than OP, who is working and planning and saving, deserves a nice holiday. That's exactly the reason Mike thinks they deserve a nice holiday actually, because they've apparently been wanting to go on a fancy vacation for a while, but didn't have the finances to, whereas we can go on one anytime. Steph told me she's looking for a job, but it's been like that for a while, so I don't know. My wife and I have two amazing kids. Kelsey is 15 and Jace is 13. About 18 years ago, my wife and my mother got into a huge fight. It got vicious to the point there was no coming back from it. My mother pretty much said to my face that she hated my wife more than she loved me, and she wanted nothing to do with us. And if she ever met our future kids, they better call her by her first name. We consider ourselves no contact with her, but at the same time, if there is a family event we want to attend, we do. My mom isn't the type to start drama at all, and she is very stubborn. So if she says you are dead to her, you are dead to her. My kids are close to certain family members, and when my mom comes to family stuff, she hangs out with the people she is close to, and there is no overlap. Since our fight caused a pretty big rift, certain people don't talk to me, certain people don't talk to her, and we have never had an issue. My kids know her first name, but just never thought much of her. Kelsey is an amazing talented artist and wants to pursue it as a career. My mom is a professional artist, so maybe it is genetic. But Kelsey was recently talking about art schools and her future, and a family member mentioned that Evelyn, the only name she knows my mom by, went to one of the best art schools in the country and did a semester in France, and Kelsey should talk to her. Kelsey, that sounds really cool, but she has never talked to Evelyn before, and it would be awkward. This family member, not someone either of us are close to, is like, wait, but you know she's your grandmother, right? Kelsey immediately looked to me, and I confirmed that is their grandmother. When we got home, I explained everything to Kelsey and Jace and told them that she is their grandmother, that another relative they vaguely know is my bio sister. and I gave them more details about the falling out. Kelsey accused me of lying to her and said she should have been given the option to know my mom. I explained that there was no real way to go about that, because we certainly weren't going to hand over our young children to a woman we were not on speaking terms with, and neither party was willing to be around the other one. Kelsey has since looked my mom and sister up online. Now, I know this sounds kind of bad, but my mom's life looks pretty cool from the outside. Her and my stepdad have money, travel a lot, and she has Kelsey's dream job. So now Kelsey feels like they could have had a great relationship. And Jace made some comments about she looks fun and would have been a fun grandmother. Kelsey thinks I am the a-hole for lying. I feel I didn't really lie, it just didn't come up. Not the a-hole. Your mother flat out told you she wanted nothing to do with you or your kids. She's met them. She could have discussed having a relationship with them with you at any time. She obviously hasn't changed her mind. I do feel bad for your kids though. They got the short end of the stick all the way around. You were just protecting them. Not the a-hole. Sit your daughter down and explain to her that your mom was the one who didn't want contact anymore. She was the one who said she didn't want to have a proper relationship with her grandchildren, not you. If your daughter still sides with her grandma, then maybe you should let her stay over for a week and revel in the rejection. I, 28 female, have had a rocky road with my boyfriends, 29 male, brother and sister-in-law, throughout our entire 6-year relationship. My boyfriend's family's nationality is Greek, and so is the sister-in-law. This is not the Americanized Greek family I'm dealing with. This is Greeky Greek. Off the bat, they hated me because they think my boyfriend should be with a Greek girl. They have excluded me from family get-togethers for years, saying that my boyfriend was welcome to come, but I am not because I'm just the girlfriend. My boyfriend was really bothered by this, so he refused to go if I wasn't included. They have said they don't like me because I'm stupid. I come from a bad family. I don't try hard enough. Any broad negative statement that has no real evidence is what they say is the reason they don't like me. The real issue here is the sister-in-law. She is a piece of work, extremely entitled, a negative energy that only opens her mouth to either shove croissants in it or talk crap, laugh at your pain, all-around nasty person. The type who still thinks daddy's money is a flex at 33 years old despite never making anything of herself. I've never had a conversation with her that did not include her trying to brag about someone else's money. Even said one time how much her ex-boyfriend makes and how she could have been rich if she stayed with him. This is in front of her husband, by the way. It has always felt like to me that she was saying this stuff in a way that was meant to put me down or make her feel superior, even though I make more money than her husband does and she's unemployed. I digress. I have never heard her say anything positive, ever, about anyone. We went no contact end of last year due to how they treated me after my dad suddenly passed away at the end of summer. Both brother and sister-in-law sent me condolence texts, and I invited them to the memorial service, but they made conflicting excuses the day of my dad's funeral to not come. Brother said virus concerns, and sister-in-law said he had to go to work. Mutual friends and family reached out to them for our address to send cards and flowers, but they pretended like they didn't have our address. I somehow end up being the one who goes to brother and sister-in-law's house to try to fix this. Sister-in-law says they haven't been there for me after my dad died because I wasn't there for them during their second pregnancy. Excuse me? What? We found out on Instagram about the pregnancy. They didn't invite us to the gender reveal party when they live 15 minutes away. She didn't invite me to the baby shower. We found out the baby was born from Facebook. My dad passed a month after their kid was born, and she threw it in my face that I've made no effort to see the baby. Sorry, I've been a little busy burying my father. There's no resolution here. This problem has sickened my boyfriend's parents for years to see their only sons not talk. My boyfriend is stuck between standing up to them and breaking his parents' heart. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You are well within your right to cut toxic people out of your life, always. Your boyfriend is a good man for standing by you. Remind him that he's not the one breaking his parents' heart. His brother is the one who has chosen to bring negativity into all of your lives. Neither your boyfriend nor you are in the wrong for protecting yourselves. My wife of 6 years and I just had our first child together. Her parents, who live abroad, have come over for a couple weeks to help us out and spend some quality time with us. The thing about her parents is that they're into these trendy DNA testing sites that have popped up all over the place recently, and they've sent samples of their own DNA and had their results back, etc. So now my wife, who's always been interested in genealogy and ancestry, etc., wants to do the same. So her parents bought a testing kit for her and brought it over with them. The thing is, those companies are basically selling snake oil. While DNA science is a real thing, what they make of it is simply unrealistic and completely inaccurate, according to the scientific community. The results being inaccurate is one thing, but what really gets me is that we don't know what they do with all that very personal data that they're gathering. E.g., we know they're selling it to pharmaceutical companies, but who are they going to sell it to next? What will malicious actors be able to do with that kind of data in the future, etc.? On top of that, there's the fact that they're probably building these huge relationship graphs, and we don't know what they do with that data either. This, to me, is where my stance against it comes from. I'm not related to my wife, but my daughter is, and I simply don't want her information out there. That's not in her best interest at all. I made my concerns clear to her and her family, but my wife doesn't want to hear about it. She thinks I'm overreacting and that she can do whatever she wants with her DNA. While I agree with her freedom, I kept insisting that she has to consider the repercussions for our daughter now and factor that into her decision. So, am I the a-hole for not wanting my wife to send a DNA sample and arguing against it? Small addendum. I live in France, where those kinds of online DNA tests are actually illegal. But my in-laws are from the US, and will take my wife's DNA sample with them and send it from the US. Update 2. Given all the questions about why she needs to do it if both her parents have done the tests already, I have to specify that her mother is actually her stepmother, who is not related to her in any way. Info. Is this a creative way to avoid your wife finding out that your daughter has numerous half-siblings? Yes, the a-hole. It's her DNA. She can do what she pleases with it. He isn't doing anything wrong by warning her against it. He acknowledged she can do what she wants. He just wants her to think more about how this is going to duck over her and her daughter when someday their health insurance gets dropped because their data got sold and now pharma companies know they're at a higher risk for cancer, etc. This is a reason that crap is illegal in their country. Not the a-hole. The U.S. military has issued a blanket warning to all service members that these companies, sites, are untrustworthy with personal data. As a person in the data privacy sphere, I 100% agree with them. This primarily applies to people living in the U.S. People living in other countries like Canada and the EU have some guaranteed rights to their data privacy that all of these companies must follow. U.S. citizens do not have these same protections. I, 37 female, am a dual U.S. European national. My legally married, this is important here, husband, 37 male, is South American. We have been married for 2.5 years. We live together in Paris. We have only lived together 3 months because of travel restrictions immediately following our wedding. I was living in the States at the time, and all visas, including family reunification visas, were not being issued. We ultimately decided to go to France because it was easier to get him a visa so we could live together. On the other side of the Atlantic, on the west coast of the U.S., one of my childhood best friends, 37 male, is getting married to his partner, 33 female. We are delighted for them, and I was excited when he asked me to be in the bridal party. Today, casually on the phone, I mentioned that we had started the process to get husband a visitor's visa for the wedding in September, and that I was hopeful this would happen. Well, this is when friend informed me that they are limiting +1s to serious relationships. And since husband and I have not lived together for 1 year, we do not meet their criteria. I was shocked. We endured a long-distance relationship for over 2 years. We have dealt with immigration officials in 3 countries. We are married. We are definitely serious. The idea that he can't come with me to this wedding, not because of an immigration hurdle, but because our relationship is not serious enough, is hurtful and insulting. I told my friend this, and told him I cannot come unless husband is invited. Friend says I am being the a-hole because his future wife is paying for the wedding, and so I should accept her definition of a serious relationship. He also said that I might be confused by cultural differences. But in every culture I know, marriage is considered a serious relationship. So what do you think? Am I the a-hole? Or am I missing something here? Not the a-hole. You're married, full stop. If they don't recognize that, then what kind of friendship is there? Not the a-hole. Here's my 2 cents. OP's friend invited her to be part of the wedding party. Something tells me the bride isn't 100% on board and was hoping this stipulation would cause this exact situation. A lot of brides don't look kindly on the groom wanting a woman in the groom's party, and even less so having an outsider in the bridal party. He also said that I might be confused by cultural differences. But in every culture I know, marriage is considered a serious relationship. Your friend is seriously confused. I don't know anybody who wouldn't consider a marriage to be a serious relationship. OP, you are not the a-hole, but your friend certainly is. I wouldn't go to the wedding either. Save your time and energy for making sure all is good with you and your husband.